the ability, the skill set, or the drive. In fact, it's actually, it can be deceiving. Their drive and their skill set that they currently have got them to where they are today, that hustle, that grind mindset. But then there's this stall out. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. The decision, this brutal decision, it's very hard to make, but when you make it, everything will change. Once you're aware of what has been going on and you make this tweak, it will absolutely change your entire life. It will change the whole direction of it. For me, my whole goal was to make lots of money, because then as an Enneagram 3, I would be valued, like my results are what I'm worth. And that's exactly what I did. Went to town on selling, working in medical field and different sales all through my life. Ended up in medical sales field and made millions of dollars in commission, and broke some records at the company I'm at. And I just remember this moment of what next? What got me here will not get me to the next level. There's the new goals, the new targets, the new thought processes. I'm not going to be able to get there with what I just currently did, which is mind blowing, right? I've become this expert. I've become this pro, this person who's won awards, made lots of money, and I'm going to have to change everything. It's a brutal decision, and we haven't said exactly what the line is yet. And if I was to think about Level Up and Live, now we're building this beautiful business, helping so many business entrepreneur, high level people. What I have done to get me to this moment in my life, I will not be able to remain here, or else we'll not be able to grow what it is that we're doing. And I really feel like, well, I have already begun that process with Level Up and Live, like as we've grown and evolved and figured out who do we need to be, who do I need to be to excel here, because it's foreign land, right? And before we talk about what this, it's a phrase we're going to use. I'm going to let Sean, if you want to kind of say yours, like how it's been for you.
Yeah, no. So when I'm hearing you share this story, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think there's one word that I've been like saying a lot lately, which is growth. If you don't have that mentality of growth, if we're not growing, then we're dying. And so that's always been embedded in my mind. And so when I reflect back the last decade and just being along in this journey with you, if we haven't killed the old version of us, then we would be stuck in that, what I say, cog in the wheel or rat race. Yeah. And we wouldn't have been able to design or try to design the life that we want to live, which I'm a big believer, Ewan, and you know this, is that we all have untapped potential. I don't care if you're, in my mind, it's like God is perfect, right? I'm an imperfect human being, and I'm striving every single day. That's my North Star. It's like, how can I align my actions? What I say, was it hurtful? Was it not hurtful? How can I kill that old version of me? Because I did not like how I said that, how I showed up, and how I approached that process. And so it's a journey every single day, the way I talk to my wife or best friend or business partner, or how I approach a meeting or a business deal or customers. Every single thing, every single interaction, I'm either the old version of myself or the 10.0 version of myself. Yeah. And so what I have learned along this journey is that if I'm not striving towards, God in this instance, and how I'm showing up, and then for me, it's like I'm going backwards. And so, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, for everybody that's listening, I feel like you're in your teens or even in your 20s, and I want to tap into your mindset on this, Ewan. Is there a way? Is there a possibility, if you're in your teens or 20s, to understand this, to really grasp what are you guys talking about? 10.0 version of yourself, working on growth and becoming the best version of yourself. Like, what does Level Up and Live mean? What does that look like? Yeah. Guys, I'm in the grind right now, Ewan. I'm making sales happen. I'm making more money than I've ever made happen before. I don't need to worry about that best version of myself or plugging myself into groups or coaching or mentoring, everything you guys are saying, but that's not me. I'm doing me right now, right? And I'm saying that because that was me in my teens and 20s.
I think it's everybody. And you alluded to it. And so now is the time. So what is the brutal decision? You totally alluded to it. You must kill the old version of yourself. And so when does that start then? Is it when you get older? Well, you're getting older every single minute, right? So if you're asking a teen, 20-year-old, 30-year-old, if you're 60 listening to this and you're, if you think about when you were 40, you still feel, you don't feel old. I'm 43 and I feel like I'm as fit and strong and as sharp as I've ever been. Yes. And I thought when I was in my 30s, like, oh, 40's over the hill. And we've had an episode about that before. So when do you start killing the old version of yourself? Every day. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what do I not like that's currently going on? And then ask, what am I doing that is working well? And so you increase the things that you've been doing well, and you look at what is sustainable over the long term. And it's just the nature of when you get to a certain place, you're going to look to what is the next place. Yes. And how are you going to get there? So you have to analyze, what are the things that got you there, right? And then think, is that going to be good enough? And then you have to start dreaming of who's the version of me that could handle this, right? So I remember thinking, if I could just make $10,000 a month, this was in college, if I made 10 grand, and back then that was a lot of money, and I could work 30 hours a week, I would be in paradise. I didn't know what I would be doing, didn't know how I'd do that. And graduated school, and it was probably 6-7 years before that actually happened. Took some time, but I remember getting there and immediately 10 grand wasn't enough. And so whatever I had done to that point to get there, it wasn't going to work. I'd have to be somebody else. Who would I need to be? Well, you'd have to be more savvy, more professional. Who knows? I can't even remember at the time what it was that I have to be, but it was something more, something different. And so a lot of that was me going to Windshield University. I remember the first time I bought an audiobook on sales. I was like, they make these? I was like, I remember Googling, surely there's something out there that could maybe help me level up. And it was Tracy. What was his name? The old sales guy. Brian Tracy.
Brian Tracy.
Yeah. And there was a sales book. And he's got this kind of high-pitched voice. The guy was a stone cold killer in sales. And he had a framework. And I'm like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. And at that moment I changed, right? I was no longer the person I was before, who was just winging it. Personality, charm, skill set that I learned. I had to kill that person. And it wasn't easy. A quick story too. Just last week, mastermind group, one of our members, they mentioned what was going on in their business, successful business, just crushing it, just taking the bull by horns, still in that early phase, a lot of nerves, a lot of systems, processes still getting worked on, but bulldog, just making it happen. And they had mentioned that they wanted to have a person come on board, but they didn't know how to do it. They were afraid that they weren't gonna have enough work for that person. And I look around the table, it was a beautiful moment. 3, 4, 5 business owners' eyes just ping. They all light up. Let me tell you, everybody just jumped in and said, hey, been there, done that. This is how you deal with it. This is what I did. Someone else jumped in. This is what, man, Sean, you jumped in and gave something beautiful. One of the other guys jumped in. Beautiful thing that they said. That afternoon, she had an employee. She had to, but you could see the turmoil in her mind quickly at that table when she heard that. Well, I'm not ready. There was a fear behind it, and she had to kill that old version of herself. She had to kill that version that was holding on to control, needed to be able to do it herself, was afraid that it wasn't going to work out for whatever reasons were in the mind. And then they pulled the trigger that afternoon. Absolute beast mode. Just phenomenal that they were able to do that. And I thought that really just sums up what killing your old self is, when you have this fear in action, and then you do something completely different, very hard to do. And they did it. And then look at what happened even after that. Her whole world is blowing up. Now she's been released free. She just became somebody else that is starting to look for those things that can make her business explode.
So this particular individual that you're talking to, she originally reached out, and in my mind, it was a lot of times we get stuck. Business owners, entrepreneurs, we get stuck, we get frustrated, and we continue to do the same thing over and expecting different results. She knew she had to change. She knew she had to reach out. That's what she did. Took step one. She reached out. We plugged her in. She came in, and now she's a member of the mastermind group. And so what I'm hearing you say is she was able to plug herself in because she reached out, she got curious, she knew she needed to kill that old version of herself, right? Because that wasn't getting her to where she wanted to go, because she was stuck. She was, unsure. There wasn't a lot of certainty. There wasn't a lot of guidance, a lot of support. Came into the group, and within a matter of weeks, like you said, she's experiencing these breakthroughs. So I'm curious with you, what would be the three biggest fears that you think that she experienced in by reflecting on the story that you had shared, that it's not only hers, but there's a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs out there that experience these three big fears?
And definitely entrepreneurs and business owners, but it also everybody, but particularly entrepreneurs and business owners, because it's cutting edge, right? Like there's big consequences for their decisions, but that could even feel true to someone who is trying to just not eat burgers and fries anymore. But it's the same thing, which is loss of control. Fear of loss of control is petrifying, because, well, then what can happen? Turmoil, panic stations. This is exactly how I work. If I think, if I'm not controlling the direction of this, what's going to happen? I don't know. And we don't like what we don't know. Even if it would be good for us, we'll still stay in comfort, stuck comfort, as opposed to uncomfortable growth. It's a terrible place to be, but that would be number one. Fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. It could be, there's many more, but those would be the three for me. Is just, well, it's the unknown. The loss of control really leads to the unknown. And then what happens at the end of all that? Well, people are watching, and you're going to be judged. And if you're judged, you might be judged harshly. And that means no love. That means isolation, loneliness, laughed at, embarrassment. All the things I'm saying, that's how I think. Like, those are all the things if I fail here, well, it's going to be embarrassing. People are watching. And so you'd have to become a different person that doesn't care about that anymore.
Yeah. Can you speak to that? So you had mentioned that, and you had tell me that behind the scenes before. It's like that fear of rejection, that fear of judgment. You are an achiever. And if you look at what drives you, that is part of what drives you. It's like, okay, you got to have the accolades. You got to have the cars and the houses. You've overcome that by killing that old version of yourself. You don't have to have that. You've reframed your mindset. It's a new narrative. It's a new story for you. But I'm sure that continues to show up for you being an achiever. And when it does, that fear of rejection, when you put yourself out there, what is one tip or one process that you go through now to help overcome yourself when you're like, you know what, I'm going to ask this business owner, to be on the podcast, or I'm going to put myself out there on a video or content. I may not get any likes or any comments, or somebody may not reach out to me. All that is rejection. Yeah. So how do you overcome that? Because you're not the only one experiencing that. There's other people listening to this right now that are that have that big fear and rejection.
This might be a skewed version to answer that, but it will explain very well how the process is for me. So, had a big house in the past, 3,500 square feet in Scotland. That's a McMansion. 1,100 square feet in Scotland is a pretty big house, and so it's like it's 3 times the size of the house that I grew up in. Right, had the BMW 550i, not just the 3 Series, the 5 Series, right? Because that would be more prestige. Which means I'm valuable. That's not true, right? Like, ultimately, I know there's something false. There's something not authentic about that. It's a defensive move, and everybody does this in their own way. We maybe it's withholding emotions. Maybe it's with for Enneagram mates, and you've talked about this. It's like, well, I'll have more control so I don't get harmed, and for me, well, I'll be successful so people don't leave me. They want to be around me so I don't get harmed. And so, but I know that's not true, right? Like, it's a defensive move, and when you're in defense mode, it's hard to grow. It's hard to be killing the old version of you to step in, because it's hard. It can make you look bad, right? And we don't like that. And so what I've done systematically over the last number of years is, I can't have this house mean something about me, and I can't have the car mean something about me. So long story short, I'll boil it down. Where I currently am now is in a cheap rental home, driving a cheap Toyota Camry. And I'm not sure if it's totally healthy, but it's an experiment of where I'm going with this. Never have I been more financially secure. I could go buy the things, but I know then I would only be doing that to be accepted by others, so that I could let them know that I was successful. So in my personality, to like my personality type with the Enneagram 3, to be seen in this cheap house, cheap car, well, then that means I must be cheap. but I know that's not true, right? So that's why I'm doing this, so that I can sit and know that I'm valuable, even though my surroundings and what may look like to other people might not look like success. Because I have to know for me that I'm valuable, like I'm worthy just for being alive. And that's been the experiment for me. And so, yeah, that would be an indicator for me, like I'm killing the old version of myself that needs to have, and there's nothing wrong with having those things. PS, I'm not saying that this is just an experiment for me, and to make sure that if and whenever I get those things again, that it wasn't for anybody else except for my own enjoyment. And it's so interesting for you as an Enneagram 8, does not resonate, I don't think, at all. You know, for you, it's more you would have your car and house. You have zero interest in what people think about you having that. It's not relevant for you in your Enneagram number. It's about that you are in control of your life, and that you have comfort in the things that you love, and no one can dictate anything for you, and which is beautiful. PS too.
And you nailed it. You executed it right on. But here's the flip side of that, right? Being at 38 years of age and just had a birthday, Groundhog Day, and so now I'm reflecting back and going, how do I see? This is the question I ask myself: how do I consistently kill the old version of myself? Because who I was yesterday is not going to get me to where I want to go in the future, right? And this is 1% better every day. We talk about this, which compounds to that 37% over a year. So understanding that, I'm like, okay, what do I need to work on today? Do I need to apologize to somebody? Do I need to show up more in kind and compassion and loving? And so for me, I've learned it's like, okay, consistently reflecting back on how, like, where was I last week, and then where am I going this week? And so everything that you're saying, I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things when I heard you sharing your story of the house and the car and who you've become in this journey, I'm curious, Ewan, man, that's so much wisdom. I hear this from other people that listen to the podcast, and they tell me in person, they're like, when they think of you, they think of this wisdom, this modern wisdom, and you're like, almost like, this, I just love talking to you, and everybody that listens to this, that knows you would say the same thing. But with all this wisdom, and has led to the killing the old version of yourself, I'm curious along the way, it's like, did you do all this work by yourself? Did you journal? Did you listen to a podcast? Did you listen to a YouTube video? Did you plug yourself in, hire a coach? How have you become this man, this wholehearted, wisdom, caring, loving, godly man, right? I'm not saying you're perfect, you're imperfect, but how have you become this individual? What is the secret ingredient? Ewan, for somebody listening to this that wants to aspire to be like the Ewan Heinemeier.
Man, well, thanks for saying all that, dude. You know me, like what we even talked about earlier. You mentioned wisdom, and I said, well, the first sign of wisdom is knowing that you're very unwise. And so maybe I do have some wisdom, because I make so many mistakes and do so many unwise things. But that is exactly how, to me, I can't sit with something that is not authentic or true or real. And I certainly, this has always bothered me too. I can't live in fear. And man, how do you say it? I'm afraid a lot, right? But so I can't live like that. And so I must challenge the fear. Like I must face it. It was funny in medical equipment sales, right? So I'm dealing with CEOs, CFOs, COOs, directors of departments at hospitals, big hospitals. And I remember thinking, I could never do that job. I'd have to knock on someone's door and start up a conversation, bring some value to them where they're going to spend, potentially millions of dollars with me. It's never going to happen. I remember the fear, like, of thinking that. And I'm like, I can't sit with that fear. And so this thing, and I would never want to do, worst case scenario, like I would never want to do that. I find myself moving towards it. Like I just, that's how, like even when I was young in Scotland, if there was a bigger boy that wanted to fight, like my worst fear was getting hurt, like in a fight, And so there's a challenge, and I'm like, well, I can't be afraid of this. So I would move towards it, and then I'd end up finding myself duking it out with this, and that's kind of how I grew up, in Scotland. It's just kind of, I don't know if that, definitely not healthy, but that's certainly how it showed up, But yeah, for me, so and this won't work for everybody, right? So, but I think what would be important is the framework that
Yeah.
would work for people, because
I
everyone's
think the
person. I'm
framework is
so
very
different.
powerful in how you approach it.
That's right, because I'm a 3 and you're an 8, right? And as far as Enneagram goes, and we're saying these numbers, if you want to know any more about that, we discuss it a lot, and especially in our mastermind.
Yeah.
We can dig into that. But the framework for me is, so like, well, what's holding me back? First question. Like,
Yes, good.
sense in it. Well, what am I averse to? Like, what am I not wanting to stare down? Like, and I think that's where that phrase, that statement came from. And a big part of that, when I remember I was running and I came up with that phrase, and you're so good at naturally just going after it. That's not your issue, staring things down. On the outside world, and I think you mentioned it so many times as well, as maybe letting go of control a little more, and maybe it's an apology here, or that's your staring, that's your dragon. Everybody has it, everybody. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I gotta stare that down. What doesn't sit right with me? And so that would be the first step. And then letting go of what no longer serves you, right? What is the thing that's been keeping you safe is actually the thing that's keeping you stuck.
Yes.
And it doesn't, like I said earlier, it's miserable to be comfortably stuck. And what we're afraid of is uncomfortable growth. But uncomfortable growth is actually beautiful when you're in it, when you've stared it down and you're moving towards it. And so it's a matter of letting go of what that comfortable stuckness is.
Is there something that you fear that you're working through right now that you can share with us that you are fearful of, and then that you're working through to get unstuck and to overcome that?
Yeah, man, so many things, dude. There's a long list. Yeah, to me, there's always venturing out into anything new, of course, right? That would be true for most people. Getting certified as an Enneagram coach. How do I really bring value to people? That makes me afraid, and that's why I'm doing it. Like, that's one of those things. That's a perfect example where I'm afraid of that. Speaking to people that I respect and having them maybe turn me down or rejection, and that's all I've ever dealt with the last 30 years. Right? I've been in sales since I was 16, 43 now, and I've won awards every place I've ever been. I've gone to the top, and yet how come I still suffer from worrying about this? So I have my frameworks, and I always know I will gravitate towards still taking action on that. Like, I will ask that person. I will do what's difficult, because I know that's uncomfortable growth. But that, I don't know if it'll ever go away. Like, it's in my DNA, it's in my personality, and so if that's true, if you're always going to deal with it, is that your lot? Do you sit with that? Like, oh, it's just the way I am, so I'm not going to take any action. That will lead you to a place of hopelessness and depression and giving up, because you're not moving towards that uncomfortable growth. So for me, yeah, those are just a couple things right there. And then taking immediate action, whatever immediate action means to you, right? Because that could mean different things for different people. Sometimes it's a different thought process. Maybe it's a physical thing out here in the world, but taking immediate action on that. Like, what's one thing you do that could align with eradicating whatever it is that is holding you back, that first step. Yeah. What about for you? How do you do it?
Don't make this about me. It's about you right now.
Dude, I've yapped a lot today, dude. We're gonna get you in here, man.
Which I love, man. My voice is clean now. No, for me, what I'm hearing you say is, though, it's beautifully said, man. I appreciate you being vulnerable there, and I'm sure people can resonate with this. I know I do. When you're going through these fears, and like you said, I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. That is one of my fears, is hurting somebody. Yeah. Here recently, me and you talk behind the scenes, and I know I can say things. I say things in transparency. I say things that are raw and unfiltered. And so in the past, that burnt bridges, that ruined relationships. And I've had to really reflect on that and work through that and grow because of who the man I'm wanting to become. Right. Yeah. And so, and for me, that's spiritual. That's the spiritual humbleness and groundedness. And how did this other person receive that? And so in my personal,
that's wisdom, dude. That's wisdom right there. You're talking about wisdom. That's beautiful wisdom.
Thank you. And I still struggle with it, man. But my fear is, like, that my biggest fear is that as far as like where I'm like building these relationships and building like Level Up and Live, the community, the mastermind group, all these people that are coming into this and then
Mm,
like that are being whether influenced or inspired or they're aspired to do the things that we're doing and talking about is building these entire relationships 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then I jacking it up by saying
mm,
something that hurts them.
mm,
That's my fear. So now I'm like, okay, well, nobody has the answers, right? Sean's got to go through this and kill the old version. And I literally I have the Bible and I read a page. I told myself I'm committed to a page every single day because that's who I need to become. I've plugged myself into a leadership form for church, right? Because I'm not going to have all the answers overnight. I have got to reflect, ask myself the questions. How can I overcome these things? And then plug myself into these environments because I just shared a social media across all social media platforms on this. See, like I've heard we've all heard you are the average of the 5 people you hang around.
mm.
And to me, that's maybe a myth, but more importantly, like you are the average of the 5 people you allow influence you.
Yeah,
Right. And so you may
definitely.
be around those 5 people, but to me, it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of stuck in these 5 people. Like, I don't like that framing of it, that narrative. I like, well, I'm the average of the 5 people I allow influence me. So what does that mean? Who do I want to become? I want to be more of a Christian man. I want to be more of a better business leader. I want to be a better friend. Well, go plug yourself into those environments. Like the story that you shared with the young lady that is a new business owner, her putting herself out there. What I'm hearing you say is that's courage.
Yeah.
That's faith. That's reinvesting your back into yourself, right? And doing these things by reflecting on killing that old version of you. You don't get to where you want to go by having the same thinking 5 years ago, even a day ago, in my opinion. You
Yeah.
got to consistently be looking at growth every single day to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and it's not rocket science, not complex, but but it's really hard, like because it's difficult to whatever's easy for you. Well, it's easy, and we could speak to. Well, I could do this. I got that. So this is my innate ability. But and we could almost feel like I've got it all down. I'm not afraid of anything until you get that thing that you are petrified of, and everybody has it, and most people don't want to look at it, man. Like, and you don't even. A lot of people listening, even myself, if I was thinking about, I could be like, well, yeah, that's tough, but there's a couple things if I really looked at it, I'd be like, oh, that's got my knees shaking, right? Because I'm so afraid of that. But that's the thing you got to pursue to kill, because that is your core fear and your core sin that is keeping you from being who you want to be. If you ever thought about like, well, why is my results not where they are? Like, why are these things happening to me? I'm currently here. I don't like this. How am I here? This is not fair. I've done all the things, or well, let me tell you, it's the fear, that deep fear that if you haven't labeled it yet, it's there. This needs to be discovered. And if you already know that what it is, well, then you can just go ahead and say, that's exactly what's keeping me from killing the old self. That's what's keeping me here with this old self, and putting that to death. Is how you release yourself and become somebody else. And it is not easy. It's not fun. It takes a lot of work, and it's the thing you don't want to do. You know how hard it can't even get the words out your mouth when you're trying to do that thing that doesn't sit well in you, and so that's what we got to look for. And only the elite, only the brave will do it.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's also too, you and like as we wrap things up, it's really because we all experience these different things, right? Some of it's the fear of unknown, the fear of rejection, all these different fears that we experience, and we all go through this process, this journey of killing the old version of ourselves, becoming that 10.0 version, that imperfect action taker. And I have found that if you're okay going through this process, the narrative, the story, the way we reframe it's like, look, I'm going to jack things up. I'm going to make mistakes, but in those moments when I do I own up to them or do I not? Right? Or do I shame myself? Am I hard on myself? And a lot of times we put our tail between our legs, and then, we don't say that apology, and we don't stare it down. Like you said earlier, we don't write it down. We don't do these things. What do? We sweep it underneath the rug. We go take a vacation, or we go sip on alcohol, and we
Yeah.
numb it. We
Yeah.
numb the pain, and
Avoid.
you'll never kill the old version of yourself. And here's what I'll wrap it up with this. I'll share my final thoughts. Is that I'm so grateful for our friendship, Ewan, because these are therapy sessions, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like having these conversations. I know it's a podcast, and we're just airing our dirty laundry, hoping that it makes an impact in serving people around us, and we know it has.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's what allows us to level up and become the best version of ourselves. And I would encourage everybody listening to this to have that one person or that group where you can share these things, because that's where you get it out, and you get that confirmation or that validation or that experience or guidance from somebody else that's been where you're wanting to go down. See, I didn't go to church. I wasn't raised in church. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't do any of these things until my 30s. And then you started speaking spiritually. You were like this, you had this wisdom and the spiritual because you had been through it. You had walked through it.
Yeah.
So there's no way I am where I am today if I don't have a spiritual leader, a friend in my life like you that is able to mustard seed little things. Maybe I don't listen to everything, but I apply just one or two different things over time. And by me and you talking it out, I can put systems and processes in place and work through it in my own, like you said, my own framework.
Yeah.
So everybody listening to this, you have the power within you to come up with your own framework. And if you need help with this, if you need assistance or guidance, me and you are here. DM us, text messages, and drop us in the comment like what you're struggling with as far as, is it fear? Is it rejection? Is it self-doubt? Because we've all been through these things, and we're just here to guide and share our own personal testimonies and stories and help you get to that 10.0 version of yourself.
Yeah. Amen, man. And for me, yeah, DM us. What do you need to let go? Like, what is it? What is that thing you need to realize that's holding you back? And ask yourself the question, are you ready? And I'm asking you, are you ready to make a difference? Are you ready to make the change? Because the uncomfortable growth is where all the magic's, where the glory is at. And if you don't, it's sitting in comfortable stuckness. That's your two choices. There's no alternative. So yeah, hit us up, screenshot the show, and let us know on the social handles. Be brave, be bold. It was hard for me today to release that, but it feels great. Let me tell you. And so yeah, like Sean said, reach out to us. We'd love to chat, and this is our mission, our purpose.
Amen to that, brother. Well, outside of that, thank you so much for listening all the way through. You are a true top 1%er. If you listen all the way through the show, make sure you share this with somebody that may be experiencing one of these feelings or thoughts or emotions that may need help. Our goal is to equip, connect, build relationships, build community, and like Ewan said, level up and live our best lives, becoming the 10.0 version of ourselves, killing the old version of ourselves. So we greatly appreciate you. And outside of that, level up and live.
Level up and live.
Ooh, you and I like yours, buddy.
Did yeah.
Oh, man.